Today, I'm talking with Ange, an animator using a lot of transformation layers in Callipeg to create animation. We talk about how she started animation, her first projects, how she uses social media to share animation, find clients, and we also go into specific animation she made using Callipeg, and she explains how she made it. Callipeg is your 2D animation app for iPad and soon on Android tablets too. It's still in development, but it should be here early 2025. It's a complete animation studio for you to animate anywhere. You get a flexible timeline, different types of layer to make drawing, audio, video, and also transformation with keyframes and curves. And to integrate Callipeg into your existing pipeline, you can export from Callipeg to standard animation software, such as TV Paint, Toon Boom Harmony, Adobe After Effects, Blender, and more. If you have an iPhone, you can also get Callipeg Mini, which is a mini 2D animation studio in your pocket. So you can use it to create animation on the go, and you can also use it as a remote control to navigate in your animation on your iPad. You can find all the info about Callipeg and Callipeg Mini right below. And now let's talk about how Ange makes animation with Callipeg. Hello Ange, thank you for being here today to talk about your animation journey and how you do your animation, basically.
Yes, thank you for having me.
With pleasure. So I know you work from Instagram mostly, but you also do YouTube videos about how you make animation. So you have a very particular style of animating with transformations, like interpolations and a very smooth animation. So that's interesting to explore. But beforehand, can you maybe present yourself, who you are, and just about your journey about drawing, illustration, animation?
Yes. Okay. I'm Ange. I'm mostly known in multiple platforms as Art for Ange. And in terms of my animation history, it's actually interesting because I've always just been a fan. I've always just been a fan, like anime, Studio Ghibli, and stuff like that. But I was more focused on illustrating, like drawing characters and all that. My first intro to animation ever in my life was high school, Adobe Flash, like the old Adobe Flash back then. And we just did bouncing animation, the bouncing ball, that kind of animation. So in a way, skip to the next part of where I got, I guess, reintroduced to it was through my graphic design work. Because after I graduated, I went into publishing and then as a graphic designer, and then that's for 9 years until 2021. And I got, in terms of graphic design, I got into video editing, specifically with After Effects and Premiere. So in After Effects, I discovered keyframing, like keyframing animation, the puppet tool and all that. And I guess it caught me, it got me interested again with that kind of animation. Because honestly, despite I always introduce myself as when people ask me what I do right now, I mostly say I do loop animations or animated GIFs. I tend to be specific because I still feel a bit awkward trying to call myself an animator, just because I really hold the craft in such... Yes, because I hold the craft in such high regard as a fan. And the reason why I didn't get to study frame by frame animations because one, finances, and I couldn't really put the time to learn the skill. And as well as I guess I was overwhelmed, I got overwhelmed by how much, how the craft is so, like the training or the study that it takes for you to finish like even a few seconds of the animation. So in a way, I always just hold it in high esteem, like the craft itself. And it's also quite difficult to balance like developing my illustration or drawing skills plus animation itself. So in a way, I couldn't really give it up. And after getting into motion graphics, kinetic typography with keyframing, it reignited this kind of animation, I guess, keyframe animation. And I thought to myself, you know what, if I can't really, at the moment, I can't learn the traditional frame by frame, then I might as well learn a different technique of something that's still animation. Because I guess what really made me think that what I was doing was animating, because at that time I really, I still feel a bit off calling myself it, was the people in the comments when I post something, when I edit the type of like the stuff that I do, the animated emotes or animated GIFs, people would ask me what programs I used,
Classic.
and I guess with the feedback that I'm getting from people and they're asking me what type of animation it is that, it made me realize that in a way they're right. They're right. It is animation still, but it's different. It's a different technique. It focuses more, just as you mentioned, transformation keyframe. So I decided to, I guess, hone my skills with that regard. I guess I sort of, it all started really when I went full time as a artist in 2021. After I got laid off due to
Oh.
COVID, and I decided to go full in on it. So I was also going through a style change from, I had a very detailed semi-realistic style before, and I transitioned to back to anime style, and I got into streaming. I got introduced to the community, the VTubing community to be specific, and that's sort of what got me started. I told myself I wanted to learn how to do rigging because it's sort of similar, because they also use mesh keyframes. So I thought, you know what, I'll learn that. It's a good skill to learn at the same time. But I couldn't buy the PC. I couldn't achieve that. But despite that, I didn't want to give up. So I told myself, you know what? If I can't do that, let me figure something out that's sort of similar, but not the same thing. So I decided to make the most of what I have, which is the iPad. And I told myself, please let there be an app that finally like has keyframing in it, because I used to look for one all the time, and at some point I guess I stopped for a while, and then I'll never forget the moment I found Callipeg in the App Store, because I saw the trailer that plays immediately, and it was the spaceship. It was the spaceship in space, and then it transitioned to the curves, and then that diamond keyframe, and I was like, what, when has this been here? And I was so excited to like download it, install it. I didn't even care if it didn't have like trial. I just wanted to get it, with subscribe to it and all that. And yeah, after that I started exploring the app, and I watched the tutorials in YouTube how to do it. So I actually started more with animated emotes, since I was working more with streamers who use those as streaming assets for their chat. I started with that first. So it was really, at the time, I think I was also looking for something more with my art. I love drawing, but there's something about just adding a bit of something more to it that appealed to me, or at least I felt like would help me stand out, since it was the first time I was really ever being a full-time artist, like, or at least able to like pursue, there we go, pursue a career as a full-time artist. But in a way, of course, there are so many talented artists as well out there, so I wanted a bit of something that would help me stand out a bit. So, and I thought that adding like movement, keyframing and all that to my work would help it, get more, I guess, get attention in terms of when I post it, or at least how I work on those things. Because I do love sharing my process. I started with line art. So in a way, that's where it started with me. So I started doing animated emotes on Callipeg.
I think we can maybe later in the discussion talk about social media and how you make your videos and so on, because that's also a nice part to discuss.
Yeah.
And did you have some I don't know, some first exercise or first work you made on the iPad with the transformation that you can remember that was kind of the first one you did?
I remember practicing with Callipeg at the time, and it was October. So I was thinking, I think I have to do something that's close to the holidays. So something like that. So this is sort of we call it YCH, if you've heard that term. And it's called Your Character Here. So I create these bases, so the clients already know what their characters would look like animated. So it's sort of like that. They give me the design, and then I put their characters in those animation bases that I made. So this is where I really started with emotes. So I made this for the holidays, and uh it was, in a way it was experimental, but it really got good feedback. It got really good feedback at the time, and that's sort of for me, that's sort of where everything started, where it got me to exploring more, and it got me to, a good example is also this there,
Yeah.
like the sketch and all that. I did that in like Callipeg. By the way, I one of the things that I love like with Callipeg is that I actually get to, like, the drawing tools there really help me plan there before I render the animation. So I do love that aspect to it, that I get to keep the keyframes, I guess, without affecting the illustration. So something like that. That's sort of called YCH. And as you can see here, this is the, I guess you can say, progress. Like because I tend to update it, because here's the thing: the more I use Callipeg, the more I seem to learn new things about it. And since when I learn new things, or like movements or mechanisms, I tend to, I like updating a previous idea, and just, giving it a different I guess, look to it. And it sort of helps, actually. It helps me see my progress as well, with learning how to, even the timing and all that. Because I remember I used to do keyframes wherein I just loop them at the start and end, and then it goes. I just put the one keyframe in the middle. Like, I used to do that, but now I play around with it more. So it really helps that I guess I explore how it works, and I feel like even this year I'm expecting myself to do more with it, and update some ideas. This is the one wherein I've sort of had already an idea on my process. So for the sketches, I actually just do it already directly on Callipeg. So, because I usually, like, at this stage, I love giving the clients, the people commission me, like, a good preview of how it's gonna move, even if the sketches are rough. So, and they like it too. So, which is part of which is part of the process that's fun for the both of us. So that's more for custom stuff, and actually there's a lot more. So I just selected a
Yeah.
few. Yeah.
And there we can
So-
see more subtleties also in those one, because we can see the face moving at a different pace.
Yes.
That's the head. So you start to introduce more principles from.
Yes. Yes. Actually, that's the thing. Even though I don't get to study like keyframing. I not keyframing. Sorry, frame by frame. I still look at the principles. I still look at the bouncing ball, the stretch, and I still apply those things. And even like with the I remember the wave. Is it the wave, or yeah, the wave principle and all that?
Yeah.
I still try to incorporate it, or at least the principle, the teaching of it. I still try to keep in mind. Yeah, keep in mind and try to apply it as best as I can with the style I'm using right now, which is keyframing. So yeah, I guess in a way it's just so fun. It's really
it seems
fun
to be,
to,
because you seem to try with the same style in a way, but many different types of animations, and also more complex ones. I can see through time you try more ambitious animations. It's fun to watch. Also.
yes. Thank you. And then, okay, I think this is the next level, like after the emotes, that really got me. I have to say, I think this is one of the reasons why I'm so grateful that I discovered Callipeg, because it really gave me, I guess, financial as well, in a way, to, because, it's not, it's navigating, in terms of being a full-time artist is very complex, and nowadays. So in a way, I do try to be more strategic with it. Like, I try to be creative, but I also need to be strategic. So in a way, I have to, like, for example, these are great, actually. These are great and fun to do, but I wanted to as well improve myself further, like to further it. So that's where GiftTubers came along. So remember when I mentioned that I didn't succeed in making VTubers, like I buying a PC to learn VTubing. So there's this thing wherein they call PNG tubers. I actually talked about this in my recent Callipeg YouTube video. And this is
Could you maybe just explain a bit about what is VTuber, PNG tubers to people who don't know? Because I assume that everybody knows, but
sure. Yes. Okay. VTubers are the ones wherein usually they're in anime style models, and they have face tracking wherein they are rigged to move the same way the face tracker does. So it does give a variety of expressions. It also has multiple toggles, and by toggles, expressions come there. Even hand movement, like it changes, it can shift. It's very complex, to be honest. Even I actually just realized when I was able to draw for one. I was just drawing one and it was intense already. Yeah. So rigging it is definitely more extreme. So so you can see this in streamers. So usually they're virtual YouTubers or something. And they use models. So majority of them are in anime style, but I've seen a lot of people play around with different styles nowadays, which is fun. So that was my goal. That was my initial goal, to be able to make one and learn how to make one. And when I couldn't achieve that, I told myself, okay, but I want something that's animated. And there's such a thing as PNG tubers. Now, PNG, as it says, these are like static images. These are just images that shifts between a talking image with mouth open, eyes open, and a non-speaking image. It's also used in Discord, like when you find stream collaborations and they have pictures or characters right there at the side. That's what PNG tubers are. Now, I thought to myself, then I'm gonna have to find the middle ground between a VTuber and a PNG tuber, and that's where I tested GiftTubers, and this is a good example of it, the one that I'm showing you. I am also showing you like the process wherein I did a line art or a sketch at the side. This was already done in Callipeg, so that after final rendering, I can apply it to Callipeg once I'm like, I guess I've the coloring has been approved by the person who commissioned. Now, these are actually existing GiftTubers. These two characters, they actually have their own VTubers. So I was actually surprised. I didn't know about that. When I just shared my own versions, I do have my own version. They saw this and they told me, "Hey, can I have one made?" And it made me wonder why. I'm a VTuber, and apparently, they need it for the higher end games, the heavy graphic games, because it was hard for their computer to handle using the face tracking of a VTuber model as well as a AAA game or something. So it made me realize, so there is a place. There is a market for this. Yeah, there is a place for this. So even for actual VTubers. So it's actually it was a very interesting. I guess in a way it was a discovery in itself. When I made this, that okay, so my initial thought was that the people who would want this are people who have PCs that might not be able to handle having VTuber models, or even those that can't really, because VTuber models are pretty expensive. So they still wanna camera shy people like me a bit. So I sort of wanted to cater to those, which I do. They do come to me for it, because technically VTubers are sort of like that too. They have their own persona, as I like to call it. And yeah, so that's a very interesting, that's a game changer, I suppose, that I realized that this is an interesting idea. It was an interesting idea that apparently is something that other people might need. So that's sort of where it really started for me in terms of getting more into making GIFTubers and getting more into adding details in terms of keyframing. Because I noticed that the more I make these kinds of animations, the more I start separating more layers.
Yeah. To
Because
have more
yeah,
control.
because usually you try to simplify it at first, just to get just to learn the how it will move and all that. But then eventually, it just becomes like you tend to imagine in your head, like, wait a minute, what if I also let this move and then this move? So it's a very interesting thing to experience. And even with my inspirations, the inspirations that I actually find are usually animated gifs, since I do find fun in, and in a way it's actually also do I can make more, I suppose, like I can make more of these animations, since they're in a way gifs, or tend to be short frame, like few frames. Even with animated emotes, it can only be 60 frames. That's the limit for Twitch use. So I do love that. I do these shorter loops so that I can make more of them. And when I make more of them, I tend to improve my skills, since I do them more frequently. So I do, besides the fun aspect of it, it's also in my mind to, how do I develop more? How do I improve on this craft, since I'm really enjoying doing it, as well as collabing, because I sort of consider commissions as collabs, since it feels really, it's an honor to create these assets for like streamers, that they would use it and they'd happily let their chat use it. So it's a really nice feeling to do. And I also do like these usable these are gift tubers that I put on my shop. See, just for, because I noticed, like, actually I asked the streaming community about this, and some of them want it, and they're like assistants or something, or TTS, the text to. Yeah, so it was an interesting thing that, okay, all right, if you want me to make more of these, then I will. So I also do these kinds of things. Some of them ask for custom mascots and all that. So the more I get to it, the more I learn these new things about it. So which is really which is really which is, I think it's the reason why I'm really excited for, the journey, because I get to explore new things, as well as also continuously learn. Then wait, let's see. What's a digital pro? We're gonna get to the. This is my first. This is the first wherein I used my digital illustration in terms of character, and this is the process that went to it. This is the first time I ever looped a detailed character illustration. So the sketch here, I was already looking at how other people plan their, like with VTubers, how they separated the parts, because it's really hard to keep track when it gets a lot. So they color code the the lines and parts so that they can see which one overlaps good or doesn't work. So stuff like that. I love discovering how other people do their process as well, and apply it to mine. And of course, the rendering and the final post. So usually I do my final post, like for these things, I usually use CapCut since it's free and it has a lot of lighting and special effects. So I thought it would give, I guess it would give a bit more in terms of because it's more of a raw file, a raw animation when it's in Callipeg. I'm sorry for the flash. I didn't cut it properly. But yeah, so this is more of the planning, and then the rendering, and then the post final product. So this is the first one that I ever did with Callipeg.
I
And the
remember that
moment
one.
I did, yes, and the moment I did this, I was like, okay, let's go, let's make more. So it is pretty challenging though. I have to admit, it's definitely more challenging than when I do emotes, since the renders, like blending it together, since since it overlaps, can be tricky sometimes. But well, I always consider it worth the challenge, since it's really nice when you get to the end result. So for this one, I already did the line art. Already did the line art, and I didn't put a white filling on the layers because I wanted to see how they, I guess, move, because the others are behind and in front. It's overlapping in a way. I just left it as a line art. And of course, for the rendering, I kept it simple. Actually, at the moment, I'm simplifying my renders just so that I can practice animating more with characters. Because like full rendering plus animating, it really takes a lot of time to do. So I thought that in order to at least balance both, like my drawing skills as well as also learning new animation, I can put a balance between the two, or the time I put between the two. So yeah, for this one, actually the rendering part, I actually created 3 variations of this. Like, one is her eyes are closed, just smiling. And the other version is wherein she's talking. That's why you see here in post, there's a version wherein she's moving her mouth. For that one, I actually did frame by frame.
Okay, so it's a mix sometimes.
Yes, actually, I've started mixing some frame by frame with keyframing, and I usually do it with blinking, with blinking eyes. I also do it usually with I recently did emote wherein there's a fly and I wanted the wings to flap, so I did that frame by frame instead of keyframing the wings. I think it would be far more it looks more natural as well. So yeah, so I've started mixing the two as well, because I do try to also learn some of the rules in terms of frame by frame animation, just so that I can get a better grasp into how it should move, or what is better when it comes to what's more natural, something like that. So this one, the sketch is definitely Callipeg.
Okay.
So I sketch it there, and as you can see, it's very, like, the movements are pretty minimal, and which is usually I do it that way at first, and then just refine it after I've finished the full illustration. Because, like, I remember the portion wherein the steering, I actually tried putting the hand with the straw and the arm, like what do they call this part, together.
For arm,
and then forearm, and then it didn't work. It looked so weird. It was like this. So I was like, I have to separate more parts. So what I did was I separated, like, here, like the wrist, the cuff, you can see that's actually separated, and I just put it on top of the forearm. So the forearm is separate, which I'm really glad I did, because it feels more natural now.
Like, the movement, it helps for the different layers also, because the forearm will be in the glass, so you have to define also what's behind, what's in front.
Yeah, so I think that's the thing with my process. I learn a lot while I'm doing it, and that's probably the reason why I want to keep doing it, because the more I do it, the more I learn new things, new techniques, and most of all, it really helps me, I guess, elevate in terms of the art that I'm doing. Because that's the thing. The moment when I started sharing on social media. Oh, this one. Sorry, one last thing. The Barbie fan art. There you go. This is also one of the just some personal projects I wanted to make, and it sort of got me into this nostalgic dress up games and all that. And I was sort of thinking of that, like, what can this skill fit, like, in terms of the industry and all that? Where can I apply it to? So in a way, I was just testing the style that I was going for, and people told me that this is an old school dress up game, which is fun and cute. So I like that the more I also explore this kind of animation style, the more I see that there's so many things that can be done with it as well.
Yeah.
And the more, I guess, the more excited I am for the, 'cause I have so many more projects in mind that I'm just trying to catch up with all of them at this point. So it's definitely one of the things that I really really love uh in terms of character I guess I can call this character keyframing maybe, or character
Mhm.
animation. Yeah. So that is the, I guess so far, these are the ones that I've made, because the rest is, not yet done or haven't
Mhm.
started yet. So, in terms of the social media aspect, I've just always loved showing my process.
Mhm.
It's like even when I was illustrating, I was already showing my line art, and then eventually sketches when I got a bit more confident with it.
Yeah.
And after that, when I started implementing keyframe animation to my art, and a lot of people started asking me about it, I thought to myself, then might as well share them, share them my process, because I'm sure this is pretty common for us artists, the imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
And at the time, I just felt that I didn't know enough yet to be sharing
Yeah,
what
that's
I know.
a big questions because some
Yeah.
artists just want to show the final product because if we share the process, we also share some mistakes maybe, and we are a bit more
Yes.
vulnerable to the critics. So I can understand that, but I
Yes.
have that same mindset of just show how you made it because it can help also people saying, okay, I can do it too. That's also one of your
Mhm.
motivations, maybe.
Yes. I think one of the things that gave me confidence is that I don't think I'll ever really be I'll never get to the point in my life in terms of art that I'll know everything. Like,
Mhm.
I've just accepted that whatever skills it is, it'll eventually evolve, it'll advance, and I would always want to learn it. I would always want to learn new things, new tools, and I've just told myself that I'll never get there. I'll never get ideal, like the ideal mindset, that
Mhm.
I'll never get to the point wherein I feel like I'm good enough to teach. So what I decided to do in terms of social media was just take everyone along with me on the journey, show them that okay, this is where I started, and it's not perfect, and but it's a start. So I think that's one of the things that I really love in terms of sharing in social media. It's sort of a diary of sorts.
Yeah.
It's an artistic diary of your journey. Even my illustration style, like if you go back 2019, 2020, my art style was completely different. Even other when they see my art before, they were like, what
Yeah.
happened? And I just told them that it's normal. And that's why when there's this discussion of art styles, I tell them don't stress about it. Just have fun. Find artists that you're inspired by, and then just blend them together. Get the features that you want to apply and build your own art style from that. But don't, you don't need to stick to it like
Yeah.
100%, because you will want to change it eventually. You want to shift. Besides changing art styles, like for example, if since my art style before was detailed and rendered, if you look at my art now, which I'm intentionally simplifying, like lessening the render because I want to animate it, it would for other people, they would look at this as a regression,
Mm.
like a regression of art style because it's simplified. And I'm like, I don't feel that way about it, because I don't really have to render that to prove to myself that I can render that, or I can draw that way, because
Mhm.
I already did. It's just I'm just allowing myself. I'm allowing myself to be fluid, to be more free in terms of not only making art but also adding this skill set to my art. And in order to have both, especially right now, as a full time artist, I also have to think about the financial aspects to
Mhm.
being a full time artist, to how to keep doing what I'm doing, but also enjoy what I'm doing. So I needed to find the balance with that. And for me, it's that, okay, if I don't render that way before, it's okay. Because I'm adding something new to what I'm doing. And because I realized when I shifted art styles, I suppose in a way it did affect my social media growth at the time.
Mm.
Like there was, I think for a year, there was like no growth at all. But I admit it did affect me at the start. I was like, probably, the people who followed me for the original didn't like it.
Yeah,
But I
but new
also didn't want
people
to put
come.
yes, but I also didn't want to pressure myself because my handle Art for Ange has always been my handle since I opened the account. I never
Mhm.
changed it. And the reason why I called it Art for Ange is I need to remind myself that this is my journey. That I can't yes, I can follow trends if I want to follow the trend, if it's something I'm interested in, but I have to remind myself that I shouldn't let myself be pressured because that's the thing about social media, especially nowadays. There's so much pressure that
Mhm.
I see other people, experience or feel, especially with the algorithm changes and all that. And I can't really fault them for it because I have felt that way before. But, in a way, since I've been in social media longer, even if I wasn't really an active creator, I was just a fan,
Mhm.
I I did learn to not measure myself when it comes to analytics or numbers
Yeah,
because it gets here
it can be
a lot
very,
if
very
you
scary
do.
also to see that your new post is not as good as a previous one, and you just want to beat yourself post after post, and it's a bit
Yes.
strange in a way.
Yes, in a way, it's actually more mentally, it affects you mentally more than
Mhm.
anything else and emotionally. So, it connects. And that's why when people reach out to me and all that, and they ask me, and then I give them advice, but I also remind them that it's, it can never be measured. The only
Mhm.
person who can really judge or at least tell you that what you're doing is wrong is technically you. I mean, you are your worst critic.
Yeah.
I mean, at least in my position, I am my worst critic. So we have to be kinder to ourselves, especially in the social media world, because it's really from I guess from the way I see it. Because I've been in social media in 2012, so I can just imagine, for people who are new in
Mm.
social media to get affected by it. So that's sort of in terms of being an artist on social media, that's sort of one of the things that I have noticed as of late. Actually, I noticed how it affects artists lately, and can't really fault them because I've been
Mhm.
there too. And in terms of like journey in itself, I take social media as a story, at least my story as an artist, which is also why I've started also sharing some bits of like behind the scenes, show myself a bit more. Because I was a pretty private person, so I only started showing my face this year. Even when I was streaming, I was using my GiftTuber
Mhm.
model. So in a way, I just want to take everyone on a journey with me, and I also want to emphasize that it should be just every artist's journey when you're in social media, because really getting into the in terms like trends, for me, follow the trend, but if you're really genuinely interested, like for example, what's this? Oh yeah, Bridgerton happened, and then there's a
Mm.
lot of fan art on it. Now, if you enjoy the series, go for it. I actually have one right now that's still unfinished because I'm still animating it, but
I can
but
imagine all
stuff
the
like that.
layers to make the costumes and so on.
Yes, yes, actually. And I added more separately because, I wanted to make it more dynamic. So, in terms of like sharing on social media, my biggest, like for me, I just make it as a diary, as my journey diary, because
Mhm.
it is really nice to look back. And not only that, I love being able to show that it's not smooth at the start.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't look like the first or the early, it's a journey of trial and error, like really. And especially when it comes to keyframe animation, that's sort of the thing that I realized. Wherein one of the features that I love in Callipeg is the fact that I can create transformation layers or I don't know what it's called, but subfolders of transformation layers, because I keep trying different styles of movement.
Yeah,
So
I have some groups, V1, V2 for my animation sometimes.
yes, yes. So I love that kind of method because it really is about just, exploring. It's experimentation, exploring, and I do enjoy that process. But, in social media, it's really hard to show those kinds of process since, we only have a minute to show in a reel. And that's also the reason why I started becoming more active on YouTube because I'm glad that I can show more and I can slow it down.
Yeah.
Because
but it's interesting to me to compare YouTube and TikTok, for example, because I'm more on YouTube myself, and it's also a bit more long term, because people will go back to it, just ask for the question and go back to your video, and it's a bit more useful long term to me, even for people making tutorials. That's really great that you start to do more tutorials, and it seems to go nicely also with the comments, and I've seen a bit on them. I usually read all the comments when I see a video, so that's my thing. I just okay, what people are telling about that, and yeah.
I see. Well, there'll be, I have more coming up. Actually, I have a lot of archive footage right now. It's just, editing. That's the thing. I'm happy, or actually I love being able to make the long form video. But admittedly they do take more time to do. So I guess that's just the challenge of that format. But in of itself, I guess in a way it's a good thing because I do have already advanced content to edit.
Yeah.
So that's more of how I'm perceiving it, so that, I don't feel bad. This is what I made of my own character.
Okay.
This is where it started.
So it's moving when you speak.
Yes, it's like fun. Just a loop, and it's a mic. What do you call this? It's audio. Yeah, audible base. Okay. So as you can see, this is the program. Yeah, this is the program. So there are like expressions and all that. So this is sort of how it works.
And what is the name of that program?
It's VTubers. It's free actually. VTubers, and this is usually used for both PNG tubers and GIF tubers. Oh yeah, I mentioned it in the recent video. And where's my drawing toggle? There's my drawing toggle. So this is what I used for streaming before. Because the thing is, I think
you have to manage it while you are making the stream, so you have to make the right expression and so on.
Yes. And actually, the thing about this one is that the reason why I did this as well is that, when you have a camera, it does feel like, you're paying attention to that as well while you're also drawing. So in a way, I feel like this keeps you look, what do you call this? This helps you just look at what you're doing and continuously doing it.
During live streams, you are also aware of your camera, and I always tell myself I'm just going off camera, and it's disturbing. So I try to be more centered, and you don't draw the same way when you know you're filmed, of course.
Yes. So that's one of the reasons why I also made. Besides the fact that I was also camera shy. So, it does help. And I also like that you can play around with the you can change characters, or like the illustration itself, you can update it with like funnier character designs. I think that's the thing that I find interesting about it. Because I actually, after I did this, I made my friends their own versions for Discord, just the simpler ones, which is, it's fun to see on stream. So yeah, in terms of that, that's one of the things. Speaking of streaming, now that I'm getting more into YouTube as well, I've been considering like going back to live streaming because I think it'll
Mhm.
help for real time questions because I do get the same questions in a way because of course it's new people,
Yeah.
new viewers and all that, especially in social media. And in terms of that, I guess that's the best way how I can really say like having social media as an artist. One thing that I do need to emphasize is that since I don't really have experience in, or at least in terms of the field of not having a social media, I can't really give my take on that. So the only thing I can really say is that it did help me. It
Mhm.
helped me in terms of finding clients, in terms of commissions. And one of the things that I do want to, I guess, share here is that the YCH, the one that I showed before, wherein you sort of have these, I guess, pre animated characters. It's a really great way to for especially if you're an artist that wants to do animated gifs or emotes. It's really a great way of finding the right kind of clients because they already have a vision of your vision when you do this. And this really helped me start off. Like, I'm getting animated emote commissions right now, custom, even though they don't know how it's gonna look
Yeah.
from, in my hands. And I think it's because of this. It's because they see the result that I do for others. The only thing I really ask of them is that do you have a specific expression or just an animated GIF that you wanna give me so that we have a I can apply it to your vision to my vision. So that's one of the things that in terms of yung starting out with this kind of especially commissions because I've been seeing commissions be challenging nowadays.
Mhm.
And I think that's also the reason why the people who've reached out to me want to learn how to do keyframing as well because they feel that if they add movement to their characters or their illustrations it'll give it it'll stand out in a
Mhm.
way in a different way. And that's also the reason why I've been sharing it. Like I've been wanting to share more on how I do it because I want to share with them that kind of experience and opportunity as well. And also the skill. It's really interesting to be able to share a different kind of animation skill since I guess I'm getting more, um, I'm gaining more confidence as I do more of this as compared to how when I started
Mhm.
because, it's still, it's not frame by frame, but it's still animation in a different, is a different technique for sure. But it's a technique that I believe is beginner friendly. I think that's how I see it. Wherein you can try it out, you can practice it, and it admittedly it's easier to start off of as
Yeah.
a in terms of making small animations. And I think that's an important thing to for me in terms of having social media. I think that's one of the things that I want to be able to show through my experience that you can do this if this is too hard, which is true. It is more complex. Maybe you can start off with this and then eventually get to the more complex ones. But the thing with this is that similar to me, I'm starting off with this, but I'm not yet removing the possibility of me actually learning how to do frame by frame in the future. But at the
Mhm.
moment, in terms of just balancing both earning as an artist and growing as an artist, this is the perfect balance for me because it helps me do both. So that's sort of the one of the things that I've learned and I'm experiencing now. And also, I guess I suppose I gain more confidence in sharing the process in social media. I used to not
Yeah.
share, but not really because I was making mistakes. I guess in a way it was hard for me to explain
Mhm.
what I was doing because even at the time I was doing it, I wasn't really sure how I was doing
Yeah.
it since it's a lot of trial and error. That's also one of the things that I emphasize in social media is that this takes trial and error. Like when they ask me, how did you get into that? I usually respond with, well, I tried different movements, or, I start with the simple ones and then get it more moving detailed. So stuff like that. An interesting conversation to talk about in terms of the how things are made, or something like that. Yeah, actually, this is part of the gift tuber that I was showing on Etsy and all that, but I added more elements to it just for I was honestly, whenever I do these, it's also part me practicing. Like I'm exploring, like adding more elements and even backgrounds in the future. So this is sort of part of it. And in terms of layers, woo. Okay.
Because in
all right.
traditional animation, there is not that many layers. You usually have your,
Yes.
I don't know, maybe
The
10
frame.
layers is already huge. But when keyframes,
Yes.
for example, we have, I think the spaceship I made maybe has 60 or 70 layers, because there is the character within the spaceship, within the entire
Yes.
environment. So it can become tricky to be organized. So I can see you use the
Yes.
color tabs and so on.
Yes. So in terms of that, actually, in terms of the thing is, with my process at times, I try to keep the sketch layer. Sometimes. I do love seeing I guess, a preview of where it started in terms of process. I guess it's a habit for me that it helps me also look back on how I started the idea and then its finality. So I usually keep that, so it adds another layer to the other layers. But for this one, that one is this one. This was the starting point of it. And for this one, it's actually pretty, like, it has, there, it's layers. Speaking of this layer, I made a pink version because someone asked.
The arms are so
Yeah.
fun, because you can see really it's really flexible.
Yes. So it's more of just a variation of like the same character. And so when I actually did that, I thought to myself that, as of the moment, I've been just focusing on just one character, like how to make a character move in terms of the keyframing. And eventually I just know that at some point I'm gonna have to add some elements to it and all that. So I'm more of starting it by just building it up. Because I remember when I used to tell myself that, okay, make a scene, like do a scene, or like illustrate a scene. And I'm like, okay, that's, you're pressuring yourself again, don't put too much in at the same time, like don't jump. So this is how it progresses for me. So in terms of characters, and then wait, let me go back to there's only double per transformation layer. There's 2 layers. It's the green variation of the frog, and it's the pink. So I usually have that kind of formatting in terms of my workspace. So let me see. I'm gonna take this.
And what we can see here is that you have only 35 sheets, so only a few drawing elements, and then it's only keyframe curves. So you don't have to draw that much to do that kind of animation, which is a bit less stressing, I guess, in a way, because you can just try and then just add a new transformation layers, try new keyframes, add different interpolation modes. It's a bit less stressing.
Yes, and I think one of the things that change in terms of my process is how I look at things. For example, I sort of talk about this a lot in social media, wherein I tell everyone that, can I please stop animating everything I'm doing? Because can I just like sketch, or can I just draw a character and not imagine it moving? Because I've sort of built that habit, like wherein when I draw a character, I end up trying to think of, okay, how am I gonna separate the parts here? Like, so it sort of become like second nature to me. So I've been trying to like just draw, just draw, and you don't have to animate it. But since I got into it and I'm enjoying it, it's becoming a habit for me to just keep making more.
Yeah.
but the folders, I remember when I downloaded this and there wasn't the grouping yet. There was no group
Yeah.
feature yet. It was just the transformation. And I remember I was like, when the folder grouping came update came out, I was like, yes, because I keep adding so much stuff, and I was like, okay, this will be easier now to switch between the what I'm adding or the old one. So it really helps a lot. So
Yeah,
yeah, for this
that's
one, it's
always
actually my
that's always the challenge for the development, is that we know that everything needs to be done. But for example, you know that currently we are working on the Android version, so some other features are just
yes,
on the side, and we know that we have to do that at some point. But it's like, okay, we have to
yes,
define. For example, at the beginning, there was no transformation layers, and we decided
yes.
to do that before adding the audio version, the audio layer, because
Oh,
we thought that it was more interesting to have a new thing than just the audio
yes,
in a way. So that's
yes.
why it was already there when you discovered, I guess, transformation was already a thing, but it was not from the beginning.
Yes, because I remember that I looked for an app. I remember I looked for apps that had that, and because a lot of them did free trials, or you can test them out. And I literally downloaded every every
Mm.
animation app just so that I can see. I mean, even though I did also try, frame by frame, but in terms of the tools in itself, I just, it was really hard to find one that was user friendly for beginners like me and all that. It was, but with Callipeg, I mean, even just the frame by frame, that's one of the features that I also love about Callipeg. It's how easy it is to do frame by frame as well. For a beginner like me. The fact that you can just cut and duplicate, it's so easy, like with Apple Pencil and all that. It's really, I told myself that this is the right way to do it.
Thank you.
Like, this is the right format. And even this one, this is really like I tried an animation app that, okay, it has keyframes, but it was all stuck on this kind of like this.
Oh yeah.
And so doing keyframing with multiple layers and like opening it up one by one was really, really difficult for me to work on. So, but before I discovered that, I was already using Callipeg. So I was like, what do this? So yeah, I think that's why I really, really enjoy working on a lot of things here. And I also recommend it highly for people that are just starting out, just want to do these cute gifs or even emotes, want to get into it and learn it. That's the reason why I'm sharing, like whenever they ask me, I'm like, you should do it in Calibre first, because it really, it's really, I think I emphasize that in my videos as well, like how fun it is to learn there. Because even when things look, or at least the movements, like at first you feel like it's awkward, there's something about it that feels like, you know what, you can just keep making it better with just a few adjustments,
Mhm.
since it's keyframing, it's not frame by frame. So I think because that's the thing that I also hear with other artists, wherein they do find it overwhelming to get started on it. So, and that's also the reason why some of them watch my videos or my reels. Like, I even encountered a comment wherein she told me she was like trying to pause at the right moment just to see what I was doing.
Oh
Because
yeah.
yeah, so stuff like that. And it made me want to share more the more I receive those kinds of comments or messages. So yeah, so I always recommend them, like, try this first, because in terms of keyframe, I by the way, I have to say this, I've only tried it once, but I was amazed with the, is it JSON, the file
Yeah,
format
JSON format
to
to go to other
to
software. Mm.
JSON format to After Effects. I was like,
For what you do,
like, I did it
it's
for,
really useful. Yeah.
yes, because especially since I do have an idea how to use After Effects that way, since I did it for my work before in terms of motion graphics. So I was like, you can add like of course, with what After Effects is known for. Yeah, I love how it can flow. Like for example, with the new Callipeg Mini, you can get started on there, brainstorm ideas, like start with sketches. I actually did that, but
Yeah.
I just didn't film it because at the time I was just in a cafe waiting for my friend, and I was like, I'm feeling a bit, I had an idea and I just wanted to put it on paper. And yeah, and I ended up getting commissioned for it. So it's a very interesting really tool. It's actually an amazing tool to have with you. Although I am known for always having my iPad with me, but it gives me more it gives me the option to not have it and yet still be able to make something with just my phone and then move it to the iPad, and then if I want to do the After Effects thing, I can just move it to After Effects. So I found that mind blowing, because when I first imported it, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, yeah,
it keeps
I was
everything.
like, yes, it was. I mean, it can get overwhelming if you're not familiar with After Effects because of all the But for me, it's the fact that you can work cohesively, just let it flow like that in terms of process. So it's a very powerful, for me, it's a powerful ability of an app. So yeah, in terms of my process. So this is more of the simpler version. I actually haven't utilized much I'm not sure what it's called. The one wherein you use the individual global anchor point there. I haven't utilized that much yet. But I have used it here just for the flowers, just some simple movements. I do have some Oh, this is a good example of the combining frame by frame, the one that I mentioned, the mosquito, wherein I did the frame by frame for the wings separately as well as the line. The thing is, I actually tried to do the line differently, and I was like, it's not working. I have to do this frame by frame. And when I did it, I was like, this is perfect. This is better.
And
so it's really about.
For the fly, what could be possible is to draw just 2 or 3 sheets and then make it a cycle instead of duplicating.
Yes.
And that way you can just cycle it, transformation.
Oh, I haven't tried that yet. That's interesting. Oh, yeah, I haven't tried that yet.
So to make a cycle, you have to select several sheets and then you tap the cycle option, and that's it. And then you just have to extend.
Okay. Oh, that's okay. Definitely getting to my next process video. So yeah, that's sort of one of the elements that wherein I combine both. And I've also been I do have these kinds of commissions as well. I guess this is the more simplified versions of the VTubers that I showed before. This is the one that I did on my recent YouTube video, the process. Yeah, I did this kind of VTuber, usually used on Discord as well. And actually, from these kinds of ideas, for this one, I as I showed there, I separate the whole face, and the whole face is also separate. Like the brows, the eye itself, and the mouth. All of them are in under one transformation layer, and then they also have their own individual transformation layer. So for that one, because the more I learn, the more I actually realize what parts I want to keep separate. So in a way, when I do something new, I apply the same structure to some of them. So it helps me, I guess, get a bit faster than previous.
Animation is long. Whatever you do, it will be long.
Yes, because I think the more you do it, the more you notice, like, especially like timing and movement, the more you get more, you feel more you want to play around with it or just explore a bit more of the movement and timing. So for this one, the body, actually, this is actually the simplest form for what I'm doing. But speaking of frame by frame, and I think it's a good example. From this one, I actually started exploring another version of this that has frame by frame. And it's this one. Combination of the effect that other people do with the sketching, the
Mhm.
moving lines in a way, like drawing it again. So I wanted to try that. I wanted to try, what would it look like, but with keyframing. So I decided to apply it, I guess, to, well, this sort of my persona character. And I really like how it adds a different kind of uh I guess look to it, or it feels different. It feels different from the actual, because the in a way the change of texture also is an animation in of itself. So
Mhm.
I was, when I did this, I was like, this is interesting. Like, this would be a good, in a way, a good additional style to
Mhm.
add to what I'm doing and all that. So when I did this, I I just ended up, I end up having this process wherein I'm combining frame by frame and a bit of frame by frame, but more for effects and stuff, and of course the basic keyframing. So I have a lot I have a lot of stuff here in Callipeg because of, so I also did this for Halloween like last year. This is a gift tuber, or a TTS as streamers call it. So I I also have that. The thing about this one is a bit tricky for me when I did it, because I had to make sure that the tail is, oops, sorry, that the tail was blended well with
Mhm.
the upper body. So that, I guess at times that would be one of the tricky parts, where if you render something that has more detailed
Gradient.
shadows, or like, yeah, because when you cut the part, it has the possibility of not blending well,
Mhm.
and it looks, it would look off. So so I in a way, I was just finding a way wherein not to, be able to find a way to work around that kind of thing. So it's also the reason why I think us having my current illustrations have lesser shadows would just help me as well, in terms of layers, like the overlapping layers easily blend together. So that's one. So this is a good example of the frame by frame that I mentioned earlier, of the same kind of model. So yeah, so adding that, the texture, the shifting movement, sort of,
Yeah,
I feel like it adds a different kind of, I don't know what the term is though.
it's
I guess
more
style. Yeah.
handcrafted in a way, more
Yes, yes.
pencils.
Like
So I like
rough
it a
or
lot.
something.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So I that's all, that's a pretty new I guess I call it like experimentation, because I do, when I do these kinds of things, it usually just pops in my head, and I'm like, what if, what if,
Mhm.
what if? And I usually like applying it to see it, because that's sort of the kind of artist I am. I'm not really the kind of artist wherein whatever's in my head I can like visualize on, you know. So I have to do it, give a more clearer
Yeah.
vision of the idea. So that's also the reason why my process usually takes me with like writing it down or sketching it already, and just like the one that I mentioned that I did in Callipeg Mini and then moved it to iPad. It's like, it's just something that, is it gonna work? So
Mhm.
that's sort of my thought process when it comes to these things or
So
idea.
even with the same style in a way for the like the stylization of the characters, you can experiment with like the colors and the way you can make, for
Yes,
example, the lines moving, like shifting a bit in a cycle, and then
yes,
transforming that. So you could
yes,
trick even more the 2D animation style of your work.
yes. So actually, that's the thing. I just did that right now, the cycle. So I'm gonna apply that on the next one. I would,
It should help.
I do remember seeing that in the tutorial, but then I think it just,
It should be there,
I
yes,
forgot
but
it, so I couldn't apply.
it's nice because if you have a cycle, you can then draw on the first sheet, for example, and it will be on the cycle.
Yes,
And you can also do that without a cycle
yes,
with the linked sheets. So you can just duplicate
yes.
as a
Oh,
linked
yeah, yeah,
sheet, and then it will be the same whatever
yes.
happens.
Yes, I think that's also one of the reasons why I said that this is probably the best experience I've had with comes to frame by frame. I didn't know that, but the fact that it's capable of doing that is like, way way above the rest, in my opinion. Uh, Especially as someone who's tried everything and anything at this point.
Mhm.
So so it's really, really helpful. And I just really want to emphasize that, for someone like me that was also, I guess at some point I did feel overwhelmed, with in terms of the animation itself. I guess I became doubtful. Like, can I still
Mhm.
catch up? Because when I fully committed to being a full time artist, I was already 30. So I turned 30 that year. So I told myself, you're gonna start, so you better, I guess, in a way, get you better start. For me, it's like I better start finding what I really want to create. So I'm really glad that I got this early. I was able to find and do Callipeg early, because when I started, I wasn't really certain yet. All I know is
Mhm.
that I draw, characters, I get art commissions, but I feel like I was also looking for something more in my art. And I think with Callipeg, it gave me more clarity, because art is very, very broad.
Yeah.
Creativity is very, very broad, so you can get lost in it in a way, like, because you're gonna want to try everything. But I just realized that, I feel like I can't just start from the very beginning in terms of, because I do already have some idea. Like, for example, when people ask me about Calipig, they ask me, how what tutorials do I watch? They
Mhm.
ask me that, and then I tell them, I watch in terms of learning Callipeg, watch Callipeg videos. Now, if you want to do, I guess, more, watch keyframing
Yeah,
videos
in
of
general. Mm.
After Effects. Yeah, just the, like, how they use transformation layers and all that, and sort of try to apply those things to Callipeg, because that's what I do
Mhm.
sometimes, because but I do understand that they're not familiar with that, because because I have a history with After Effects. So I do have the idea that I can get from there, that I can take in Calipeg, and just in a way simplify it, or at least put a twist on it in a way, using it. So that's sort of the one of the things that I also advise or suggest to others when they're really getting into Calipeg, because a lot, so far, I've already been seeing, like, some of them have been tagging me
Mhm.
like to see their cute animations on Calipeg. So it's really nice to see that. um and also, of course, asking me to, like, how do I do that, so I think that's also the reason why I've been wanting to share my process more, just so that I can, in a way, I can help them in their,
Mhm. Yeah,
in
completely.
their exploration, because I always tell this, it's a trial and error thing, but it's fun for me, so I hope it's also fun
Mhm.
for them, because a lot of the times in Calipeg, what happens is that the things that, or at least the gifts that I've been making, are sometimes by coincidence I just get the right keyframing, or like I tend to arrange the curves right where it is, and
Mhm.
it's like, oh, I didn't know it can flow like that. I usually use the word flow
Yeah.
because it feels more natural when I see the movement, and I'm like, that's better, like, stuff like that. I suppose that, okay, this one is also something. I'm doing stream assets, since that is more of the client base that I have. So I did this as for just for gamers and all that. So I was like, for this one, this is also a combination frame by frame. So as you can see the buttons, it's like they're being pressed on. So
Mhm.
I colored them differently, so that there's a change to how it looks when it's being pressed. And of course, this one, the what do you call this?
The joystick, I guess.
Joystick, yeah, the joystick. And then of course just add the some more fun elements to it. But this is more of just an idea. This is more of me brainstorming and stuff like that. I believe is what really makes, at least for me, doing this really, really fun, but also educational. Since admittedly, I guess I'm self-studying when it
Mhm.
comes to this, since in a way there are a lot of resources, that I can get those techniques from as well. Because I also watched riggers. Like I know I mean technically they're doing something different, but the techniques in itself I feel like can be applied with what I'm doing, which is keyframing. So I think that's the reason why whenever I'm learning or trying to think of ideas or techniques, I rely on multiple avenues of resources when it comes to how they do theirs in a way, and just try to
Mhm.
apply it to mine. I follow different kinds of animators in um, Instagram as well. So it whenever I see my feed, I get fed by by different kinds of animation. Like I see rigging, I see the, of course, frame by frame animators. And so yeah, I feel like it's also a good use of social media when
Mhm.
it comes to, doing the or learning. Yeah.
And I was wondering if you use a lot of pivot points that you move to, for example, for the arms to put it on the shoulders and so on for the transformation. Do you move the pivot point when you need that?
For the pivot point, yes. Actually, I try most of the time. My pivot points is per part. I usually have a transformation layer for each of them.
Mhm.
I tend to like this one. I think most of the time I put the pivot point. Like for example, for the arm, this is what it looks like from behind the arm, the shoulder. I mean, upper arm. So usually for this one, it it sort of depends, because when I draw a character from scratch, I try not to visualize the parts separately first. I did that
Mhm.
before. It sort of became a habit, and then I realized my characters look stiff because, in a way, I'm breaking it apart when
Mhm.
I haven't even made it a whole yet. So I try to get that out of my system. So I would usually sketch the character in full first to get the form, and then that's when I start planning how to separate each of them. So it usually depends. So for this one, this is actually, this was the early stages of when I was just learning Callipeg. So for this one, the cap is separate. The face, of course, the first thing I
Mhm.
learned is separate, and the body is separate as well, like there. But as you can see, look at for this one, the left arm is with the body. So
Mhm.
in a way, technically, I could have separated them. But at the time when I was doing it, my focus was on the stirring of the coffee. So my initial thought was that maybe I don't really have to separate both arms, since my goal here is to just have the animation be focused on the movement of the stirring of the coffee. So in a way that it goes with my me also thinking about the best way to not only draw it in detail but also animate it, but also not take too much time. So in a way it's more of a planning. Like I do tend to plan it at the sketching stages,
Mhm.
just so that I don't remember the term for it, but it's like wasted layer. It's like you
Yeah,
separate it, but then you don't really
you
do
don't
anything with it
use
or
it.
something. Yeah, yeah. And it feels like, and when you do something with it, it doesn't feel right. So you don't move it at all. Something like that. I feel like I've encountered that, wherein they said that's why the planning stages are very important, because it helps you be more efficient. Like you don't end up doing those things wherein you over, I guess you cut out too many layers and you don't really need to do
Mhm.
all of that for each. So it's tech I guess techniques like that sort of help me when it comes to doing more of these things. So this of how it's broken into parts. So this is the shoulder, the arm behind there. So the braid is also separate there. There. Those are the separate just for that section. So when I did it like this, I told myself, well, that's enough layers.
Yeah.
Because the focus here is the face, the change of expression, and of course, just the emphasis, which is the stirring of the coffee. So, yeah, in a lot of ways, it really, the planning process is really important because admittedly, I do have my moments wherein I skip it. I'm guilty.
Hmm.
It happens from time to time, and I usually end up like doing something that apparently I didn't have to do. Like, for example, create an extra layer. Apparently, it didn't have to because it didn't need to be moved or stuff like that. That would just add, because of course, when you're drawing, you're rendering everything
Yeah.
so separately. So in a way, it takes it has its own process that also takes time. And for me, that's sort of the one that takes the most time, which is the part separation, as I call it in my process. So yeah, that's
Eh,
a that's I guess that's a good view of how it works
yeah.
for me, or the process.
And maybe just one last question for the
Sure.
demonstration part. How do you animate? Like, what the first thing you animate? You animate the front, the back. You start to have a rough movement before going to details. What the process for the animation?
So on this on itself, I actually, okay, I'm revealing the sketch. I think the only one that I didn't get to keep was the eyes.
Mhm.
Oh wait, I did. Oh, there we go.
Oh.
There. So this is like the initial sketch here on Callipeg that I did. And in terms of parts, I can't really say that there's a lot. So it started with this leg. I guess in a way I just wanted a bit of movement at the lower part of the character. So I thought that, a bit of movement would help. So this is literally the sketch, by the way. So just a silhouette. So all the way from, okay, please don't the blob thing. It's because I needed to cover, because there's a part on the layer on top wherein there's supposed to be a closing there. So I just put that, I guess you can say, cover for it, since it's not going to be affected. So that's also the thing. That's why it's better to plan so that you can see if you can do tricks like this that will never be seen. So more of like efficient, just being efficient about it. So after that, all right, already went with the body. So as you can see here, I combined the lower part of the hair already, because this is more of, for me, it's just efficient, because I felt like, I think it's okay that, because at this time I was still exploring how to really do character movement. So for me, I was just trying to be efficient as I was learning. So for this one, I was combining the back part of the hair and then of course the front, because I know that I'll be putting the rest on top so it will be covered. So for the body render, it's this one. Yes, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So which is, in a way, like, even the shadows are already there. Also, the principle of the parts that are not seen. It's not really a mistake, but technically I could have not gone this with the hair, because it's generally gonna be immensely covered. But either way, since I do enjoy, drawing, I just added like that. And then after that, this one. Okay. So for this one, as I was sketching it, I think it made me think that the scarf, I think that's the reason why I added the scarf design. Because initially I was thinking, how can I separate the head and just, how can I animate it easier? I'm not saying, it's just, how can I apply it by and able to separate it at the neck, just give it a bit more, not the neck, the upper body, and give it a bit of movement. So I thought to myself, then I'll use clothes. I'll use clothes to be able to do that with the layering, so that I also don't have to be worried that it would look awkward, especially with the neck part. Because I feel like if I did it without the scarf and I showed the neck, I feel like the keyframing it might get more difficult for me to make it look natural and flowy if I expose the neck. So in a way, in a strategic sense, I just went with the, let's use the scarf. And then, as I always do now, oh, this is the sketch of the face. But as you can see here in the frames, like I just did the simplest blink animation. I just did the simplest movement for it
So
since
there
I
is
was just
a
starting
middle
out.
close and then closed, and that's it. Oh no, there is no
Yes.
middle close. It's just you put the
No,
eyes on the
it's
bottom.
just the head. Like, where is it? Is it this? Oh, no. Okay. It's this part. This. So I also separated a bit of part of the hair, like
Mhm.
at the sides, just to give it just the effect of it having a separate, there's separate movement for it as compared
Okay.
to the one at the back. So just I guess those details that would just add a little bit more to when I keyframe it. This whole part with the left arm and the scarf and my fur baby, they're all together. And I wanted to, of course, in my original illustration, I wanted the scarf to be around my dog as well,
Mhm.
since winter, Christmas, and all that. So I thought to myself, hey, the design of scarves is, I can do this, I can use that, and I thought to myself, hey, I can layer that on top because technically it's, it's at
Mhm.
the outer
Yeah.
part. So and I'm holding my dog at the outer part, so in a way I can put that on top of the body. So I guess in terms of the planning stages of this, it's actually I actually recorded it. I just haven't edited it, so it's been so long. So what happened was when I sketched the whole illustration, I color coded the parts. So just like this, just like I showed in the initial sketch. So this was already pre-planned. Like have the scarf drop here and then circle around and then show even this part, like the right arm, as you can see here. In the original part of the body, there's no shoulder because
Mm.
in a way it won't really be seen. So elements like that, like it really helps when I sketch beforehand and then I see if the pose would work with separating the parts and which parts I can prioritize. So that's sort of the thing that I wanted to learn here is that how can I make it like how can I make a simple animation of this character and how many layers can I limit to like make it as simple as possible because my goal here was to just make it move. So I wasn't really being too ambitious with it in terms like dynamics and all
Mhm.
that since I just wanted the the potential. I was trying to test my own I guess not only my art skills but also the keyframing abilities, or at least what I knew before when I did this. So after that, as I mentioned, the face, I always separate now from this moment forward, even the blush. So for this one, this is pretty basic frame by frame, just close of the mouth. And as you can see, I put a combination of a keyframe here. So it's usually just position, just moving it up and down,
Mhm.
just small movements like that. And of course, a little bit of, I think I used this scale. Yeah, I used scale, just like the illusion. I was going to say illusion. The illusion of a little bit of movement on the face, like whether it's, because as you can see here, as compared to my previous works that I showed before, like the eyebrows are separate, the eyes, the mouth are separate. But as you can see here, it's the most basic form. They're all together in one layer. And I switched the mouse in the frame by frame method
Mhm.
and the blinking. So, and then just added small movements to it like that. Like the thing about this, when I was doing this, I was like, that's so weird. That's like, it might look weird. But then if you think about it, it's going to be just a millisecond or a second that they'll see this. So the transition. So I'm like, I feel like I'm being too tough in
Mhm.
terms of, making it perfect. So my goal was just to um, really see how I can make a character move in its simplest uh, technique. So for this one, the face, even the way the eyebrows go down. So I use the scale technique, as you can see, which now I don't do this because I separate the brows from the eyes now. So, but for this one, oh wait, so for this, by the way, I love this feature, the reminder. Yes. So from this one there, as you can see, I just did the scale thing, and I thought to myself, it does change the expression if you think about it. It does give it like a little, gentler, I guess, transition look. It's not the way I animate mouths now, but I guess for me the process of this is that it works. It's sort of that concept that hey, if it works, it's not really wrong in a way. Like when you look at it, it's more of just eyeballing it, I suppose. But in a way, it does have benefits to just eyeball it, because sometimes when even me, when I illustrate, I like get too much into the detail, like zooming in, and I'm like, no one's even gonna see that anymore.
You go to
so stuff like that, it sort of applies here. Yes, and with animation, I feel like that reflects in the timing, wherein I feel like I'm looking at the movement too much. When you play it back, it's so fast, you barely even notice the shift or like the transition. So I feel like it's sort of for me, it's the same as when I zoom in drawing. This one, when I zoom in on the timing, it's like I tend to like, wait, they'll never see that. It's too fast. It's too fast for the human eye. So I guess habits like that, I tend to learn as I do more of them, and I stop, I guess, overthinking it as well, because just the habit of it. And then I for this one, okay, for this one, it initially in the sketch, my fur baby's face was initially not gonna. My initial plan was not to animate it, so meaning it would just be in the drawing itself. But then I thought to myself, it would be a bit weird that my face would be moving, but hers wouldn't be. So it's more of just cohesive, like being cohesive with the composition. So I decided, you know what, let's separate it. So I sort of applied the same thing for her, just the basic frame by frame, like the animation blink, like this, just that. And the same principle that I did, which is use the position, and then just put a frame wherein both mouth and eyes are closed.
Yeah, so it's already mixing traditional and keyframe because you have different sheets.
Yes, so that's also one of the things that I did learn as I made the VTuber models, was that it's the best way for me to mix because I always had this perception that, or at least the way I in terms of keyframing, the concept of it is technically like the easier way to do in-betweens or something, but not necessarily the frame by frame style. It's more of just transformation keyframes. So in a way, it sort of applies to this. So what happened is that as I keep making more, I do tend to add more frame by frame, because now that I know I can actually mix both, I can add more variety. So for example, the recent VTubers I've been making have different mouth movements now. Like it used to be just this. Now I'm putting like different stuff like that. And then I'm putting transitions in between them so that they can just like move quite smoothly and naturally. So yeah, I do love that aspect of it, that I learned through just continuously practicing with the app. So I'm learning as I go. I'm learning as I make more of this. So, but by the sense of it, when I was making this, I was just like, it works. Like, when I look at it, it's like, it works. Like, it's simple, but at the same time, it's just, when you look at it, it flows well, I suppose, like I can say. But of course, since, I'm learning more techniques based on just multiple resources, I've been wanting to, let's apply this technique, stuff like that. But I do love that I can still do this. Like, for example, if I do take more time in rendering the illustration. I can do this kind of animation, and I don't have to separate multiple parts and all that, because in a way that does take the most time, the rendering each part.
Mhm.
So yeah, I love that. So technically that's all of it. And then the final movement that I usually do is just to usually for oh, it's just a rotation and a little bit of scale.
For the entire
Yes.
drawing. Okay.
Yeah. So actually you can see here if you zoom in, you can see like the parts like submitted and all that. So
Mm.
this one really took a lot of trial and error, since I had to find the pivot point that would
Yeah.
work best for it. So I think I wanted the a little bit of movement for the scarf. Like as you can see here, it's scaled a bit. So I think it's sort of like that. I think that's why it takes me a while to really figure out what the especially the pivot point. I think that's the difficulty when you just have so many parts together. It does affect everything in that layer. So it's more tricky to find a pivot point as compared to if you have things separate, because you already know where to put them. Like just with the arm separate, you just put it here and just put it here. So in a way, by structure, it is easier as compared to making huge chunks of layers
And
together.
trying
So
afterwards
it really,
to make it
in
work.
a way, it's yeah. So it's definitely trickier. But I think that's also the reason why I did the sketch first. I can make that kind of cut, as I guess I would call it. I can make that kind of part separation work, because I did see here in the sketch that you know what, it can work. It can work. So that's sort of the process, I suppose, when I was planning this illustration. So, but now my methods have shifted. So, of course.
We now know a lot more about how you work, and we can see also your tutorials and your process, both in short formats and long formats. Maybe you have a final, I don't know, like final advice, a final experience you want to share about animation, about working as a freelance, anything you want.
I think what I wanna say the most is for people like me who get, I guess, felt a level of intimidation or scare or fear, fear of learning a new skill, especially animation. Like we have these animators right now wherein they share their process, and they don't tell us it's easy. They do admit that it takes time. I guess I want to reach out to those that just want to, even as a hobby, new skill set to their art, bring a little life to their static illustrations, because that's sort of how I felt with myself. I was like, I sort of wanted it to move a bit. Like it reminds me of digital storybooks. It's a digital story, and you turn a page, and then just this small movement animation. It gives me that kind of feeling when I do this. So in a way, those beginners, like me, that are huge fans as well of animation, I would I would like to tell them that it is, if you don't, just like me, at the moment, you have the time, because, learning a new skill takes time as well. Let's all admit. So if it's at the moment, you can't do frame by frame, like study frame by frame yet, just like me, we can start through this. We can start through keyframe animation, because the more you do it as well, the more you would want to learn the principles, the just the rule of timing and techniques that frame by frame animators do. So for me, in a way, if you just want to, as a hobbyist or even someone who wants to really get started, because especially those that see my animated emotes, if you want to be able to, this is the best way for you to start off, so that it can feel like a lot, because I know that it can be a lot if it's in the traditional frame by frame style. So, and of course, most of all, just have fun with it. I mean, I think that's the reason why I kept going. Like I'm still doing it. So, and it's been, this August marks my third year as a full-time artist. And so, I've been doing this for like 2 years, keyframing, and even I myself have noticed that, hey, the more I'm learning new things, the more I'm applying this. So you'll also experience that. You'll also experience that excitement in just and like adding more stuff to the skill that you're currently learning. So I think that's the one I want to emphasize for those that want to get into just have fun. Like for example, animated GIFs. There's so many people who use animated GIFs now. So, just have fun with that. Like put your own humor into that. So, because that's technically what I do with mine, just like what I showed earlier, the one with the head empty with the mosquito coming out. That was basically just me wanting to stop myself from overthinking. And I was like, I want to create an animated GIF regarding that feeling. And that's what happened. And it just made other people laugh when I shared it. So it's stuff like that. Just have fun with it and don't be scared. Don't be scared because that's one of the reasons why I'm sharing my process, so that you also know that, hey, you can join me, you can do this too. And it's just gonna take you like 3 layers or something. So then it's stuff like that. Like you can do it with just this, and then eventually as you get more to it, you can make more. So that's what I really want to say, because this is based on my experience and how I also felt before I started. Yeah.
And for me, a big lesson is also that you do short projects. So it's just a loop, just one character or two. So you don't go, okay, I will animate a full short film with many scenes and so on. So that's also a good way to just say, for example, to begin with, I give me a week to create something.
Yes.
And then you see how it goes, and you don't go for years for one project as a beginner. It will be too overwhelming.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually also suggest look at animated GIFs, the ones that make you laugh and stuff or even memes. Some of the ideas that I have, I actually got from memes and stuff, and and it because I already based it on something. When people see it, they're like, I know that there's a familiarity there. But the best part of it is that since they're familiar with it, they already have this I guess there's already an attraction to it, I suppose. Like it's interesting to them since they're familiar. So that's also a big advice of mine. When you get your inspiration in terms of like animated GIFs, I really emphasize starting with animated GIFs because it actually lessens the pressure into making the longer ones, the longer animation, since animated GIFs are basically quick loops, So I really advise starting with that, so that just like you mentioned, it definitely makes you do more since it doesn't take a lot of time as compared to the longer loops. So you can start with that, and just by the end of this, I promise you, your phone gallery is going to be full of animated GIFs of inspiration because that's what my phone looks like. So take from that and make it yours, make it your own version of it. Yeah.